They will continue to perform as they do today. Could I get an amen to that one? Thank you. If we don't change people's thinking, we will not change their performance. Okay, second assumption. When people are not held accountable, performance lapses are commonplace. Accountability is what drives society. It's what makes an organization or a family or a community work. Without accountability, somebody's pulling the wagon while somebody else is kicking back and taking a free ride. Okay? So we've got to have accountability, but we've got to change people's thinking if we want to change their performance. Likewise, if people can't see tomorrow clearly, they assume tomorrow is going to be like today or like yesterday. So part of our job as leaders, part of our job as the people who go to the conferences, the people who soak up this new information, the people who convert the ideas from the main platforms and the breakout sessions into practical application dialogue in the hallways afterwards, we need to help other people see what's possible. We need to paint some pictures of what tomorrow can be. Because if it continues to look like it used to look, nobody's going to change their behavior. And if nobody changes their behavior, no, it doesn't stay the same. We fall behind. Agreed? Got to constantly grow and change. So what's coming? I don't know. I know some things, and you know some things. You know, we know that e-commerce is enormous, but it's minuscule compared to what it will soon be. We know that skills that we used to deny that we were going to need, you know, like email and things like that. Nah, I don't need to fool with that. I got people that do that. Remember those days? Yeah, we're talking way back in, like, I don't know, 99. You know, we're finding that, of course, we've got to have new skills. Sure, technology's getting easier, technology's getting more user-friendly, but at the same time, if we're not constantly learning and growing, we're quickly becoming obsolete. So as we come to the conferences like this, as we go online, we do research, we talk with our colleagues, and we find out what's coming, we need to ask ourselves further, what do we need to do to be ready for what's coming? Because if you're not ready for it when it gets here, guess what? It's not your opportunity. It's somebody else's. Ooh, a little disturbing thought, huh? So if you want to know more, start to notice more. And start noticing more in a lot of areas. Look outside your own field. I want to run through a little scenario with you here. This is a model where I just talk about how long it took various technologies, most of which you deal with on a day-to-day basis, how long it took these technologies to reach 30% market adoption, saturation point, you know, beyond which it starts to just flash into everybody's world. Okay? For the telephone, it took 38 years for 30% of the market to adopt it. 38 years. The television took 17. Personal computers, 13 years. Scanning technology, over 10 years. Wireless phones, 10 years. Remember when it was so fun, so clever to call somebody from their front porch and tell them to answer the doorbell and then you rang it? Wow. Okay, we've come a long way. Hey, put it on mute, will you? Okay, we've come a long way. The internet took 7 years. Now, has anybody picked up a trend yet? What's next? I don't know. How long is it going to take to be adopted? Less than... Exactly. See, what happens is society advances based on two things, based on the solutions we produce and on the connections we sustain. So what we've got to do is we've got to focus on the servers and make sure that the CBLF servers are right. If we're going to have all this technology and it's all changing and evolving, if we don't take care of this part, you know, we've got a serious problem. At this point, I usually entertain questions. Would there be any questions at this point? So what is a CBLF server? That would be a carbon-based life form. You and me. It's always the human factor that determines whether it's going to work, isn't it? Okay. So what matters most in all this? Well, people matter, but so do things. Look at this. Systems, information, cost, of course. Values matter. Lots of things, relationships, leadership, sure. And you matter. It depends when you ask the question what the answer really is. Someone says, what matters most? Well, if you're doing a cost analysis, cost matter most, right? If it's tax time, accuracy would be good, okay? There's not a thing up here that doesn't matter. It's just that they take their own turns being in number one position. So what matters most? All these things matter most, sometimes. But people, including you, that's what packages all of it. These are not in any particular priority order. They're just up there because that's the way they came out when I typed it in, right? So if all these things matter, then we've got to make sure that we don't neglect any of these. I said a while ago that society advances based on the solutions that we produce, the kind of products and services, and the connections we sustain. So what we've got to have is pH balance. pH, profits high. pH, people happy. Does that work for you? Okay. Now, if you've got really high profits and your people are not happy, what's coming? That's right. Okay. So what if you make your people really, really happy, but you never get your profits up again? Become a church, you get a tax advantage. Okay. Maybe you just ought to work on both sides, huh? So it's kind of like this technology. I've got a piece of business technology over here I want to show you. It's sort of like this. Remember Slinkies? Actually, it's not technically a Slinky, but it's a coil spring, and the most popular brand is called Slinky. Which side makes it work? Yeah. I mean, it's a dumb question, isn't it? Okay. So I want you to just watch the Slinky for a second. And think of the Slinky as representing profits and people, the two primary issues in a business, okay? Profits, which is the product side, which is the system side, and all the, the technical part, and people, the human side, the interaction, the relationships, the sales, and so forth, okay? How much action does it take on my part to bring this thing to life? Notice how much actual force I have to put into it. All I'm doing is just barely moving my fingers. And yet this thing's going back and forth just fine. But if I overemphasize one side, all of a sudden it stops. And it doesn't matter which side I overemphasize. So I've got to pay attention to both. I can't neglect either. But if I overemphasize one, then I end up with a really bizarre outcome. Same thing's true in your world. Okay? And that's true for businesses that are pretty large. And that's true for tiny little operations as well. The principles transfer. They're absolutely the same across the board. So here's the leader's dilemma. Okay, a person's sitting there and they say, okay, I run my own company, I got my people, I got all my systems in place, but Jim, you're recommending I spend an awful lot of time with the people side of it. What if I put all this energy into training my people and then they leave? Valid concern. Here's a more important concern, though. What if you don't and they stay? Shudder at the thought, huh? It's not optional. I mean, we don't have the option of not training our people, of not guiding their thinking and developing the right frame of mind toward all this. It's part and parcel of leadership. It's what comes from being in a position where you can make a difference. It's a basic responsibility. But there are vital relationships we have to lead people into. For example, if the person doesn't feel connected to the organization, they always will seem like an outsider, even if they've been there 30 years. If it were possible to live that long, and it may be, that you could have been with S.P. Richards from 1848 to now, if you didn't feel a connection with the vision, the values, the beliefs of this organization, even today, after all that time, you'd still feel like an outsider, someone that didn't belong. But if you do embrace what the organization's about, you feel like family the first day. So that's one of our primary roles, is we've got to get people to embrace the organization itself, to understand it and care about it and believe in it, or go somewhere else if they don't. Okay? Second thing is we've got to make sure they understand in the overall scheme of things, what's their part? Where do they fit in this matrix? They need to see how, when they produce a result and it goes to the next level, what do those people do with it, and how do they feel about the way they get it? And when they get something from someone else, where are they in the food chain? And how does it go back upstream, right? Also, they need to understand the technology they're dealing with and understand more than just the operation of it. They need to understand a little bit of the why that makes it that way, so they can help make it even better. Okay? If a person doesn't have a sense of purpose in what they do, they won't add much value to what they do. Would you agree with that? If you don't find much purpose in what you do, you won't add much value to what you do. Quick story. Years ago, I was in Atlanta in the airport, and I was in the food court. And I was standing there with my little coffee and muffin, and I was just watching all the people. It was really, really crowded. It was like out in the foyer this morning, you know, people everywhere, thousands and thousands of them. And I chose not to fight for a table, so I just stood back and had my little snack. And I noticed a busboy who's bussing tables, but he looks like this. Slumped shoulders, long droopy face, kind of dragging his feet. And he goes from table to table, and he picks up a tray, and he gets the trash, and he's making eye contact with nobody. Goes over, he throws away the trash, takes his rag, goes to another table. I'm getting depressed watching this guy. I'm thinking, you know, somebody ought to do something. So finally I finished my meal, and I threw away the trash, and I went over and I just tapped him on the shoulder. He recoiled. I think he thought he was going to get in trouble. I said, "Excuse me." He said, "Yeah." And I said, "What you're doing sure makes a difference here." He said, "No, sir, Huh? I said, "What you're doing sure makes a difference here." I said, "Look at this place. It's jam-packed with people. If you weren't cleaning these tables, in 5 minutes there'd be trash everywhere. The place would be unsanitary, unpleasant. People wouldn't come. What you're doing matters. I just wanted to say thanks for doing it. See ya." Now, I'm walking off. He's in shock. But in the time it took me to walk about 10 feet, when I glanced back, I swear he had grown 6 inches. He didn't become serviceman. "Hey, good morning, welcome to the food court. Boy, it looks like you could use one of our bran muffins. Let me help you out here." You know, nothing like that went on. All that happened is he went from depressed to neutral. Neutral. But what do you bet for the balance of his shift? He did his work a little bit better. Fair assumption? Okay. What do you bet for the balance of his shift? He felt better about himself and handled problems a little more smoothly. Okay. What had I done? Complimented him. I acknowledged him. A guy in Seattle said, "Jim, you gave him back his dignity." Ooh, well, that's kind of lofty. I don't know that I did that, but here's what I did do. I pointed out the direct connection between his performance and the effect it had on other people. I pointed out the direct connection between his performance and the effect it had on other people. He knew about that, but he hadn't thought about that. He didn't think about it very often at all, I'll bet. How many times do your people think about it? How many times do you think about it in a given day? You say, "Well, given, that's the point, Jim. It's a given." Hey, when it's a given like that, I'll guarantee you it's not getting much mental energy or much emotional investment. If we don't consciously and intentionally remember and notice the purpose of what we're doing, then we tend to become bureaucratic and just get caught up in the process of what we're doing. When people don't see much purpose in what they do, they won't bring much value to what they do. It matters. It matters. Person to person. How many of you have ever seen your business suffer because two of the people in it didn't deal with each other very effectively? Get them up? Yeah, exactly. Everyone in the room. People problems are an enormous business expense. So, is it just up to you just slap them around and say, grow up? I don't think so. I think it's a skill thing, it's an attitude thing, it's an inspiration thing. We need to inspire them. We need to lead them in such a way that they feel the need or the impetus to rise above that and to acquire the skills for resolving personal conflict. And also, person to self. If a person doesn't feel good about him or herself, it will show up in their work. Agreed? Absolutely. So it really pays to support and encourage personal development through your organization. We used to say, nah, that's their personal problem. You know, that's something, that's not job-related. The heck it's not. It shows up on the job. That's job-related. We're talking dollars here, right? Okay? So there are a lot of vital relationships that expand our thinking about what does it mean to be a leader, be a manager, be a director of sales, be a vice president of an organization. There's a lot to it. Organizational DNA, the genetic code of your organization, is contained in what you believe in, care about, stand for, and how you express yourself to the community. And that's the first thing people have to embrace in order to really be a part of the organization itself. I'm going to show you a little grid here that takes the two things, awareness, how you think, and performance, what you do. It's kind of fun, standing in front of a race car like this and saying the word performance, I feel like kneeling. That's nice. By the way, I really appreciate the fact that you chose silver cars to give away in the year that's the 25th year, silver anniversary of Cathcart Institute. I thought that was very thoughtful of you. Thank you. Years ago, when my marriage 25th came about, my wife Paula said, Jim, you know, our 25th is coming up. And I said, yeah, I know. That's our silver anniversary. She said, no, it's not. I said, yes, it's our silver anniversary. She said, no, it's our diamond anniversary. I said, you're right. I said, do you want to specify shape or just size? She said, size will do. Supported by baguettes. And she described what she was looking for and gave me time to save up for it, thank heavens. She said, by the way, what do you want? And I said, just wait till you get your diamond. And then we got it, and I said, all right, your turn. I want you on the back seat of